So, hello students. So, today we will be looking into another module known as KOHLBERG'S theory of moral development. So, coming to the objectives of this module, first one is to understand the nature of moral development. Second, to understand the different stages of moral development. And the third one is to understand the applications of this theory. So, now let us look at what is this theory all about. So, how do we know what is right and wrong? How do I know that lying is bad, stealing is bad? Who taught us? Where do we learn from? When we see great leaders, they have taken decisions which either helped society or brought chaos. What made the difference? Is it their moral reasoning or is it something beyond to it? So, to understand these aspects, we have KOHLBERG'S theory. So, let us start the theory with a beautiful scenario. Here it goes. So, it is called Hen's dilemma, a famous dilemma which goes with the theory. A woman was near death from a special kind of cancer. There was one drug that the doctors thought might save her. It was a form of radium that the druggist in the same town had recently discovered. The drug was expensive to make, but the druggist was charging 10 times what the drug cost him to produce. He paid $200 for the radium and charged $2,000 for a small dose of the drug. The sick woman's husband hence went to everyone he knew to borrow the money, but he could only get together about $1,000, which is half of what it cost. He told the druggist that his wife was dying and asked him to sell it cheaper to let him pay later. But the druggist said, "No, I discovered the drug and I am going to make money from it." So, now should Hans steal the drug or no? Keep thinking about it, we will come back to it later. Now, we will take a look at a bit of who KOHLBERG is and from where did this theory actually come from. So, Lawrence KOHLBERG was a 20th century psychologist known primarily for his research into moral psychology and development. Lawrence KOHLBERG was born in Bronxville, New York on 25th October 1927 and attended the Andover Academy in Massachusetts, a private high school for bright and usually wealthy students. He did not go immediately to college, but instead went to help the Israeli cause, in which he was made the second engineer on an old freighter carrying refugees from parts of Europe to Israel. After this, in 1948, he was enrolled at the University of Chicago, where he scored so high on admission tests that he had to take only a few courses to earn his bachelor's degree. KOHLBERG enrolled in the University of Chicago, and with high examination scores, he was excused from many required courses and received his bachelor's degree in just 1 year. He received his PhD in psychology from University of Chicago in the year 1958. His dissertation was based on his research into the moral choices of adolescent boys and led to a life devoted to the exploration of moral and ethical development in young people. He stayed on at Chicago for graduate work in psychology, at first thinking he would become a clinical psychologist. However, he soon became interested in Piaget and began interviewing children and adolescents on moral issues. In the year 1959, Kohlberg joined the staff of Yale University as an assistant professor of psychology. In the year 1962, he returned to the University of Chicago as an assistant professor. Over several years, he worked as an associate professor and director of child psychology training program at the university. The remainder of his career was spent as a professor of education and social psychology at Harvard University between the years 1968 and 1987. Kohlberg married Lucy Stigberg in the year 1955 and the couple had 2 sons. Kohlberg died of an apparent suicide in the year 1987 after a long battle with depression coupled with painful symptoms from a tropical parasite he had contracted in Belize in the year 1971. And to understand the moral reasoning as the basis for ethical behavior, he came up with different stages of moral development. So now we look at what these stages of moral development are. And according to these stages assume that people are capable of reason. For example, if I ask you to vote for Narendra Modi and not to vote for him, will you do it? One of you might ask me as to why you should vote for Modi. So, you reason. Number 2, people want to understand others. People are interested in others' lives and would want to know them more. And third, people want to understand the world around them. People want to make a sense of what is happening around them. And the last one is justice is the goal for moral reasoning. For example, many are condemning the Taliban for their brutal punishments. So again, judgment according to each one would differ. So this theory assumes these 4 aspects. And now coming to why is this theory very important? It's because it attempts to explain why we do what we do and helps to maintain that people can grow and mature morally. And coming to the stages, there are 3 stages of moral development. The first stage is called pre-conventional, which starts from 4 to 10 years. Second one is conventional stage, which is from 10 years to 13 years. And the third stage is post-conventional stage, which is 13 years and above. And in each stage, there are 2 stages at each level. And there is no regression to previous stages. And one cannot jump to different stages unlike the other theories. We look at stage 1, that is pre-conventional level, that is from 4 years to 10 years. At this stage, like I mentioned, there are 2 stages. So the first one is stage 0, that's egocentric. And the basic questions which are asked in this stage are, what do I want? What won't hurt me? Stage 1, and it's under your obedience and punishment. So where physical consequences determine good versus bad. And Kohlberg's stage 1 is similar to Piaget's first stage of moral thought. The child assumes that powerful authorities hand down a fixed set of rules which he or she must unquestioningly obey. And to the hen's dilemma, the child typically says that hens was wrong to steal the drug because it's against the law, or it's bad to steal, as if this were all they were to do. When asked to elaborate, the child usually responds in terms of the consequences involved, explaining that stealing is bad because you will get punished. Although the vast majority of children at stage 1 oppose hen's theft, it is still possible for a child to support the action and still employ stage 1 reasoning. For example, a child might say, hens can steal it because he asked first and it's not like he stole something big. He won't get punished. Even though the child agrees with hen's action, the reasoning is still stage 1. The concern is with what authorities permit and punish. And Kohlberg calls this stage 1 thinking pre-conventional because children do not yet speak as members of the society. Instead, they see morality as something external to themselves, as that which the big people say they must do. And the second segment in this pre-conventional stage is individual relativism. Different people have different views. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. So at conventional level, children recognize that there is not just one right view that is handed down by the authorities. Different individuals have different viewpoints, and hence they might think it's right to take the drug, the druggist would not. Since everything is relative, each person is free to pursue his or her individual interests. One boy said that Hens might steal the drug if he wanted his wife to live, but that he does not have to if he doesn't want to marry someone younger and better looking. Another boy said hens might steal it because maybe they had children and he might need someone at home to look after them, but maybe he shouldn't steal it because they might put him in prison for more years than he could stand. What is right for hens then is what meets his own self-interest. If we look children at both stages 1 and 2, they talk about punishment. However, they perceive it differently. At stage 1, punishment is tied up in the child's mind with wrongness. Punishment proves that disobedience is wrong. At stage 2, in contrast, punishment is simply a risk that one naturally wants to avoid. Although stage 2 respondents sometimes sound immoral, they do have some sense of right action. This is a notion of fair exchange or fair deals. The philosophy is one of running favors. If you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. To the hen story, subjects often say that hens was right to steal the drug because the druggist was unwilling to make a fair deal. He was trying to rip hens off. Or they might say that he should steal for his wife because she might return the favor someday. Respondents at stage 2 are still set to reason at the pre-conventional level because they speak as isolated individuals rather than as members of society. They see individuals exchanging favors, but there is no identification with the values of the family or community. Now we move to the next stage, that's conventional stage. That's from 10 to 13 years. It's a stage where we have stage 3 and stage 4 again. Coming to stage 3, it's a good boy and nice girl stage. Right behavior is what pleases others. Behavior in this stage is now judged by intention. Good interpersonal relationships are looked at in this stage. At this stage, children who are by now usually entering their teens see morality as more than simple deals. They believe that people should live up to the expectations of the family and community and behave in good ways. Good behavior means having good motives and interpersonal feelings such as love, empathy, trust, and concern for others. Hence, they typically argue was right to steal the drug because he was a good man for wanting to save his wife, and his intentions were good, that of saving the life of someone he loves. Even if Hens doesn't love his wife, these subjects often say he should steal the drug because I don't think any husband should sit back and watch his wife die. If Hens' motives were good, the druggists were bad, and the druggists at this stage, the subjects emphasize was selfish, greedy, and only interested in himself, not another life. Sometimes the respondents became so angry with the druggist that they said that he ought to be put in jail. A typical stage 3 response is that of a child called Dawn, age 13, says that it was really the druggist's fault. He was unfair, trying to overcharge and letting someone die. Hence, loved his wife and wanted to save her. I think anyone would. I don't think they would put him in jail. The judge would look at all sides and see that the druggist was charging too much. We see that Dawn defines the issue in terms of the actor's character traits and motives. He talks about the loving husband, the unfair druggist, and the understanding judge. His answer deserves the label conventional morality because it assumes that the attitude expressed would be shared by the entire community and anyone would have the right to do what Hens did. And as mentioned earlier, there are similarities between Kohlberg's first 3 stages and Piaget's 2 stages. In both sequences, there is a shift from unquestioning obedience to a relativistic outlook and to a concern for good motives. For Kohlberg, however, these shifts occur in 3 stages rather than 2. And the next stage in conventional stages, stage 4, that's law and order, which deals with fixed rules, maintaining social order and doing one's duty. And at this stage, the respondent becomes more broadly concerned with society as a whole. Now, the emphasis is on obeying laws, respecting authority and performing one's duties so that the social order is maintained. In response to the Hen story, many subjects say that they understand that Hen's motives were good, but they cannot condone the theft. What would happen if we all started breaking the laws whenever we felt we had a good reason? The result would be chaos. Society couldn't function. As one subject explained, I don't want to sound like Spyro Agnew, law and order and wave the flag. But if everybody did as he wanted to do, set up his own beliefs as to right and wrong, then I think you would have chaos. The only thing I think we have in civilization nowadays is some sort of legal structure which people are sort of and bound to follow. A society needs a centralizing framework because at this stage subjects make more moral decision from the perspective of society as a whole than they think from a full-fledged member of societal perspective. The next stage, that is post-conventional stage, which starts from 13 years and goes above. So again here we have 2 stages, stage 5 and stage 6. Coming to stage 5, it talks about social contract. That's right behavior is based on individual rights agreed upon by society. Laws can be changed to benefit society and constitution. It's more about social contract and individual rights. At this stage, people begin to ask, what makes for a good society? They begin to think about society in a very theoretical way, stepping back from their own society and considering the rights and values that a society ought to uphold. They then evaluate existing societies in terms of these prior considerations. They are said to take a prior to society perspective. And at this stage, respondents basically believe that a good society is best conceived as a social contract into which people freely enter to work toward the benefit of all. They recognize that different social groups within a society will have different values, but they believe that all rational people would agree on 2 points. First, they would all want certain basic rights such as liberty and life to be protected. Second, they would want some democratic procedures for changing unfair law and for improving society. And in this stage, In response to the Hens dilemma, respondents made it clear that they did not generally favor breaking laws. Laws are social contracts that we agree to uphold until we can change them by democratic means. Nevertheless, the wife's right to live is a moral right that must be protected. Thus, at this stage, sometimes respondents defended, saying that hence theft in strong language, that it is the husband's duty to save his wife. The fact that her life is in danger transcends every other standard one might use to judge his action. Life is more important than property. This young man went on to say that from a moral standpoint, hens should save the life of even a stranger, since to be consistent, the value of a life means any life. When asked if the judge should punish hens, he replied, usually the moral and legal standpoints coincide. Here they conflict. That the judge should weigh the moral standpoint more heavily but preserve the legal law in punishing hens lightly. In stage 5, the subjects talked more about morality and rights that take some priority over particular laws. KOHLBERG insisted that, however, that we do not judge people to be at this stage 5 merely from their verbal labels. We need to look at their social perspective and mode of reasoning. And at this stage, people are making more of an independent effort to think out what any society ought to value. They often reason, for example, that property has little meaning without life. They are trying to determine logically what a society ought to be like. Coming to the next stage under post-conventional, stage 6, that's universal ethical principle. That's right behavior is based on individual conscience and the ethical principles one chooses. Universal, which are more like abstract rules. Moral obligation to disobey unjust laws. Universal principles defines the principles by which we achieve justice. KOHLBERG's conception of justice follows that of the philosophers Kant and Rawls, as well as great moral leaders such as Gandhi and Martin Luther King. According to these people, the principles of justice requires one to treat the claims of all parties in an impartial manner, respecting the basic dignity of all people as individuals. And the principles of justice are therefore universal. They apply for all. Thus, for example, we would not vote for a law that aids some people but hurts others. Principles of justice guide us towards decisions based on an equal respect for all. In actual practice, KOHLBERG says we can reach just decisions by looking at a situation through one another's eyes. Hence dilemma, this would mean that all parties, druggist, hens and his wife, take the roles of the others. To do this in an impartial manner, people can assume a veil of ignorance, acting as if they do not know which role they will eventually occupy. If the druggist did this, even he would recognize that life must take priority over property, for he wouldn't want to risk finding himself in the wife's shoes with property valued over life. Thus, they would all agree that the wife must be saved, and this would be the fair solution. Such a solution, we must note, requires not only impartiality, but the principle that everyone is given full and equal respect. If the wife was considered of less value than the others, a just solution could not be reached. At stage 6, a commitment to justice makes the rationale for civil disobedience stronger and broader. Martin Luther King, for example, argued that laws are only valid insofar as they are grounded in justice and that a commitment to justice carries with it an obligation to disobey unjust laws. Now we come to the application of KOHLBERG'S theory. Coming to the positive aspects of the theory gives an explanation of how we morally reason. It introduces the idea that actions are based on reasoning and helps us to see at what level they generally function and at what levels can they move up. And now a bit of the criticisms of this theory. Many say that it is more of the hypothetical situations were created. It's more abstract. Again, unless and until you are more thinking about law, justice, you wouldn't understand this. It's not concrete, it takes reasoning, and it's more of a gender biased because his subjects were all male. Little value is given on care, community, sacrifice, and more of the Western bias is included in his theory, and it views individuality and justice as primary moral values, and it ignored values such as community, courage, empathy, and created an ideal which is not consistently functioned at every level. Now coming back to the hen's dilemma which we started in the beginning. What do you think hens should do? Is it right or wrong for him to steal the drug? Does he have an obligation to steal the drug? Should he steal it if the person dying was a stranger? It is against the law to steal the drug. Does that necessarily make it morally wrong? Take some time out and write your answer in a paper. And now we look at some of the responses. In case if you are saying that no, because it's bad, he should not steal the drug and he would be punished, it shows that you are in pre-conventional stage. If your answer is yes, because his intentions were good for wanting to save her and the druggist's motives were selfish, you are in the conventional stage. But if you are saying he should not steal the drug because if everyone chooses when to follow laws and when not to, there would be chaos, or yes, because the wife's right to life is more important than the druggist's right to property, then it means that you are in post-conventional level. Now coming to the summary of the module, how does one learn between right and wrong? And to understand this aspect, we have looked at KOHLBERG'S theory of moral development. There are 3 stages, and with each stage having 2 stages in it. At first stage, we have looked at it's called pre-conventional, where obedience and punishment orientation is one, where the basic questions asked were how can I avoid punishment, and the other self-interest orientation, what's in it for me, aiming at reward is seen. And at stage 2 is a conventional stage with interpersonal accord and conformity. That social norms, good boy, good girl attitude, and authority and social order maintaining orientation, which is law and morality, is seen. And stage 3 is post-conventional, where social contract orientation, a spirit of the law and justice, and universal ethical principles is seen. When we take any decisions, choices we make, maybe now or later, we get to understand at which level it is coming from. When we look at any leader taking a decision, we could observe how is their moral reasoning. More than looking at just how they take a decision, this theory looked at how we tend to reason based on what we do, rather than just looking at what we do and not looking at the reason why we do and the intentions behind the act.